Friends, I welcome you to my channel. Before listening to this story, I will ask you to like and subscribe. It is not difficult for you, but it is pleasant for me. And we're starting. I like trains, especially interstate trains. If I have to travel interstate, I'm just as likely to take the night train as I am to fly by plane. In fact, it's more likely. Trains run from point A to point B. If the weather is bad, the train will still go to point B, while the plane will flap its wings and head to point C. And this is not the place where I want to go. Is there any problem ahead? The train may stop for a while, but the plane starts circling like a carrier pigeon that has lost its home. That's why I travel by train. I was making an overnight train journey, and it was still quite early when the announcement appeared. Some idiot was trying to overtake a train at a railroad crossing. It was a draw, and both came there at the same time. The train didn't stop, and the idiot stopped in about 100 different places. There was a slight delay while the debris was removed from the tracks. I decided to take the train to the restaurant. After leaving my compartment, I walked leisurely down the corridor, only to run into a young lady walking resolutely towards me. Well, maybe she wasn't that young. She was in her 50s, and her face looked like she was leaning on him with all her weight. And she had a lot of weight. He swayed and gathered around her. She was so thick that she almost filled the hallway, and it didn't look like she was going to give way to anything smaller than a tank. And a tank would have aroused my sympathy. I leaned against the compartment door with all my might, trying to maximize the space available to the woman, and she walked past me without saying a word. Not that it stopped me from hearing some very interesting words, but those words came from the compartment I was pressed against. The conversation went something like this. "This whole situation is ridiculous," the young lady was saying. "We are all adults. One would think that the school would give us some indulgence in terms of social life. It's worse than being at home with your parents." "I agree with that," another pleasant voice grumbled. "I could swear that we are probably the only virgins left in the country, and that's stupid. If we want to meet a random gentleman for a harmless date, I don't understand why we can't do that." "Mainly because the school wants to make sure we stay virgins," followed a chuckling comment. "Do you remember last year's scandal with Marie?" "This is stupid. Any girl who gets caught naked with 3 guys in her room deserves a little scandal. She should have had more common sense. Why 3? They were brothers, and she said she couldn't decide which one she liked the most, so she decided to try them all." There was some muffled giggling. "Well, it doesn't matter. We're going to be free for the weekend, and if we can't sleep over the weekend, then we haven't tried. And of course I intend to try. I assure you I will not return to school a blushing virgin." This statement was followed by several approving comments. The speakers also announced their intentions to join the ranks of former virgins. There was one comment of a dubious nature, which said that the young girl was not quite sure she was ready to go that far. She'll take it as it is and see what happens. A reasonable attitude, I thought. By that time, the battleship woman had passed me again, and I thought it wouldn't do me any good to be found with my ear pressed against the door of someone else's compartment. I continued my walk, thinking about indecent thoughts. It was almost dinner time, so I finished my walk in the dining car and ordered something to eat. I ate my dinner leisurely, watching to see if the gods would offer me some tender morsels to delight me. I had just finished when 4 young beauties waltzed into the restaurant and stopped in search of an empty table, which was not there. I got up from my table and gave them a sign, indicating that the table belonged entirely to them. The usual, "Oh, we can't take your table," followed by my smile and assurances that there were no problems. I just finished anyway. While I was clearing the table and they were taking over, I managed to inspect them. One blonde, one young lady with hair so dark that it seemed almost black, and the last 2 with shades between these 2 extremes. If I had to place bets, I would bet on the raven-haired beauty as the one who most wanted to experience the joys of life, while the blonde, to my some surprise, seemed the most shy. I left them to have dinner. I gave the girls a couple of hours, and they returned to their compartment. I knocked. A dark-haired girl opened the door and stood looking at me. "Good evening," I said with a smile. "My name is Francis, better known as Frank. Can I come in for a minute?" She shrugged slightly and stepped aside to let me in. She probably decided that there were 4 of them against 1, and we were traveling on the train with other passengers. What could I do? "Good evening," I said to the other girls. "So what do you want?" the dark-haired girl asked. "And what's your name?" "Helga," came the quick reply. I was a little surprised. I would give the blonde a name like Helga. It just shows that you can never tell for sure. "Good. Tell me, Helga, have you seen a human airship floating through the corridors? The girls giggled a couple of times, while Helga looked thoughtful. I take it you mean the woman who said she was supersized and forgot to say stop? That's the one, I agreed. The reason I'm asking is because she walked past me in the hallway a little earlier, leaving me pinned against your door. I happened to hear enough from your conversation to realize that you had a small problem, and also to realize that I could probably help solve this problem. You're wrong, Helga said, frowning slightly. We don't have any problems. You're lying. You discussed the fact that you need to make love and wondered how to find the right person to help in this very worthwhile endeavor. I thought that since we are all spending the night on the train together, I should spend some of my abundant free time and give you some help. I let it seep through their minds while they were trying to make sense of it. The blonde was the smartest. She realized almost immediately what was the matter and began to blush. Then Helga decoded the message and looked at me curiously. What? She asked. Do you expect one of us to drag you to your compartment? Of course not, I said. If you had seen other passengers in my compartment, you would never have suggested anything like this. To begin with, I'm sure you would have shocked the priest and given him a heart attack. Then what did you mean? You have a beautiful private compartment right here, I noted. I thought I'd help one of you young ladies get rid of her virginity, and at the same time the other three will be able to see in close-up what will be expected of them when it's their turn. Provided, of course, that they find the right man. You're kidding, and who do you have in mind for this grand experiment? When she spoke, her gaze darted to the blonde, and I saw her blush slightly. I guess she had offers before to help her lose her virginity, but she still clung to it. You, I said bluntly, I find the idea of continuing your education very stimulating. Me? Why me? Why not Janet, for example? I shrugged my shoulders. I guess it's a personal choice. It seems to me that you would be more receptive to this idea. Janet, that girl with the beautiful blonde hair, right? That's what I thought. But Janet, as I said before, seems a little shy to me. A little more modest and really wouldn't want to be the one. You, on the other hand, radiate fervor and attractiveness. And do you seriously think that I or any of us would agree to this crazy prank? To be honest, when I first thought about it, I suspected that you would say no. Then I remembered what your voice was like when you said you wanted to make love. I believe that those who don't take risks don't win anything. Seeing that I wasn't thrown out the door with inventive curses raining down on my humble head, I have to say that I think you're seriously considering this. And what do you think I should seriously consider? I'll tilt you forward over some comfortable surface. I think it would be nice if you bent over Janet's lap. That way she would have a great overview of what's going on. At times like this, you want to grab your camera and take a picture. Helga's face was priceless. She didn't seem to know what to think. Helga, one of the girls said. He's right. You really want to make love. We won't mind if you do it in front of us. She glanced at Janet and the other girl. They giggled and nodded. It will be a real experience for all of us. Of course, if you want to chicken out, maybe he'll agree to accept one of us instead. Oh no, I'm sorry, but that's out of the question. It would be rude of me to propose to one girl and then switch to someone else. An insult to both of you. Unfortunately, it has to be Helga or no one. Although I could be persuaded. Very weak-willed, that's who I am. And terribly susceptible to feminine beliefs. But it would have sounded better if I had said Helga or nobody. Well, Helga, it looks like you have a choice to make, Janet giggled. It might be quite interesting if you decide to go for it. Oh, come on, Helga said, almost growling at the other girls. You don't seriously think I'm going to go along with this crazy idea, do you? Actually, Helga, said the young lady, who hadn't said a word yet. If I had been presented with this as a possible scenario before the trip, I would probably be willing to offer 2-to-1 odds that you would agree to it. What? Why? Okay, think about it. You lose your virginity, and you get pleasant rumors that you can categorically refute with a smug grin. Frank gives the impression of a nice, healthy man, and he's quite big. Wait a minute. The young lady jumped to her feet and walked over to where I was standing. You'll lick your fingers, she said. Definitely a big size. Of course, I felt that they were smaller even if I never had time to use them. But oh, to hell with it all. I do not know what to do. None of us know what to do. Theoretically, we know, one of the girls muttered. There is a big difference between theory and practice. Theoretically, you can play netball, but I've seen you in practice. As for the fact that none of us know what to do, I interjected. I know. I'm quite ready to show you. To show my willingness, I started unbuttoning Helga's belt. Her eyes widened slightly, but she didn't try to stop me. When her belt was unbuttoned, it didn't take much effort to undo the buttons, leaving her trousers beautiful and loose, supporting her hips and hope. Helga did not comment on this in any way. She just seemed to freeze slightly, staring straight ahead. A light tug on her trousers, a reassuring push, and they slid smoothly down her legs. She had lovely long legs, too. Now I reached for her panties, hooked my thumbs around her waist, and began to pull them down. Gasping and flinching, Helga quickly grabbed the front of her panties, holding them in place. "Helga, he can't take them off while you're holding them," Janet remarked. "Show us what you're made of. Let them go." "If I let them go, I'll definitely show you something," Helga said, panting. "The trouble is, I'll show him too." I pulled a little harder. She moaned softly and blushed as she loosened her grip. I turned her around to face the other girls, pushing her forward until she was next to Janet. "Just relax and lean on Janet's lap," I told her. My hand pressed a little harder on her back. Even when she bent down, she protested that she hadn't agreed to anything. Nothing at all. "I know, don't worry about it. I will not force you to officially agree, as it may cause you a little discomfort. Just relax for a while. You'll have plenty of time later to say yes or no." I ran my hand over a delicious little buttock, so soft and seductive. I stroked and teased her, letting her get used to the caresses. I haven't done anything too outrageous yet. She fidgeted a little, but she didn't try to avoid my touch. She was just bending slightly and breathing heavily. She made a small, shocked sound when my finger first penetrated between her lips and began to penetrate a little deeper, but still allowed it. A glance at the other girls showed that they were watching what was happening with some interest. Judging by the expressions on their faces, I would say that all this turned them on. Pointing to one of them, I pointed to my trousers and made a downward movement. She looked puzzled for a moment, and then she realized. Giggling softly, she unbuttoned my trousers and pulled them down along with my underpants, giving my erection a chance to breathe. I snuggled up to Helga, letting my erection press against her. From the way she seemed to freeze slightly, I could tell that she knew what was pushing against her, but she remained silent. In the end, I managed to get a louder reaction from her when I started stroking her in close proximity to her clitoris. There was a gasp, but she managed to stifle a scream, contenting herself with a slight whimper. She knew damn well what was going on, and she must have realized that her time to give up was quickly coming to an end. Finally, I parted her lips and pressed where I intended to hit. She hesitated for just a moment, and then moved towards me. I had no doubt that she knew exactly where it was and what it was leaning against. A little restless movement on my part, deciding that giving her time was fair, but giving her too much time was just stupid. I increased the pressure, now clinging tightly to her. She pulled away from me slightly and then resolutely pushed back with a sigh that turned into a soft cry of pain. The other girls gasped in satisfaction at this moment. Apart from a few sighs from Helga, I fit in perfectly. It didn't take long, and Helga moved with me, lifting her ass and pushing towards me. Soft, pleasant sounds came out of her throat as we merged together. When Helga became enthusiastic and said, "Yes, please," I slowed down again. Instead, I did my best to keep it at the current level. Each long stroke excited her, gave her pleasure, but did not elevate her in any way, and her disappointment began to grow. "Hurry up," she said in a low voice. "I'm sorry? Hurry up. I want you to do it faster." Let me take a look. I turned to our audience. I paused for a moment before continuing. If I hurry up, Helga will finish pretty quickly, having experienced a little climax, and that's it. However, if I continue in the same spirit as I am moving now, I may delay the process a bit. Helga will suffer sweet torture for a while, but it will do her good. Should I speed up the fuck or just keep her on edge? 3 giggling young ladies made it clear that I should keep her on edge. I apologized to Helga and refrained from hitting the gas. For the next few minutes, everything was very nice, except for Helga's complaints. Then it all became too much for her, and she sincerely begged me to continue. Her earlier cheers had now turned into plaintive screams, muffled by the realization that she couldn't really scream at the top of her voice on the train. I gave her a few more minutes like that, and she quickly started to get nervous. She let out something like a strangled scream, and then she shook so hard that I thought she might fall off Janet's lap. My hands were on her hips, holding her still as I finally gave it my all, leaving her stunned. After a while, everything calmed down, and I got ready to leave. Before leaving, I had a last word with them. As you know, we're going to be on this train all night, and it's going to be a long night. I'm going to rest for a couple of hours and recharge my batteries, and then I'll come back here. I want to show you something else. It seems to me that Janet is quite shy, modest, and probably wouldn't agree to me seducing her in front of you." Janet's hasty nod told me that I understood everything correctly. Seeing that this is the case, I thought that when I get back, the three of you could strip Janet naked and hold her while I turn her into a non-virgin. Thus, she gets pleasure from being deprived of her virginity without agreeing to it. Helga and the other two girls looked at each other, seeming to assess whether they would agree with my plan. Damn it, they agreed. Besides, they're quite impatient. Janet shook her head and kept saying, "No, no, no." "Don't worry about it, Janet," I said soothingly. "If you can convince others that you don't want to take part in this, then you won't have to do it. As a backup plan, we'll just undress your two friends here and I'll try them both out. This way, we will be able to save your impressions until the morning." With that, I left, leaving the girls to discuss and protest. I would be really interested to see what will greet me upon my return. A locked and locked door, a naked Janet, or something else. My hunch was that it would be a naked Janet, end.